So you want to create a Shopify app, but you don't want to waste your time creating or setting up a developer's account and a development store. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a Shopify private app without creating a developer's account or a development store. Stay tuned for that. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because previously, one of you guys commented on my, latest video, and you're saying that previously I created a video about how to create a Shopify private app, when in fact it wasn't really a private app. Instead, it was, I believe, a custom Shopify app. So, you know what? Yeah, you're right. That was a clickbait a little bit. So today I'm going to show you how to really create a private app. And also I'm going to fix that video. So there you go, fixed. But before we start this video, make sure that you have the two softwares that you're going to need so you can start making a Shopify app. Because the difference between private app and then custom app or public app is that you don't really need to install or to do OAuth or authentication to install a Shopify app to your Shopify store. Because basically, if you create a private app, it's already there, it's already installed. So all you need to do is just to create your own server, or you can use softwares or platforms like Postman or API testers. So yeah, we're going to do all of that step by step. But first, make sure that you have ngrok and then XAMPP. Because later on in this video, we're going to create our own server, our own website, so you can do API calls. So without further ado, let's begin. Let's open our Shopify store. So basically, this is my Shopify store. This is only a development store, but it doesn't really matter. Even if you have a development store or a Shopify store, it's all the same. So open your Shopify store and go to apps page. And then you should have the following page. And here at the very bottom of the page, select the manage private apps. And you should have the following page. And then you'll have to enable private app development. So click that. And you should have the following window that says you'll have to read the terms and conditions, the policies, and all of that. So if you have time, you can read all of this, but I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to make this video long, so just read the following terms and conditions or policies. So I'll just check the following checkboxes. And I'll select Enable Private App Development. And finally, after that, we can finally create our own private app. So here, I'm going to select Private App or Create Private App. And we can finally fill up the following form that's going to show up in 3, 2, 1. There you go. So here in the app details, you can just name your private app whatever name you want to name it, because it doesn't really matter. It's not gonna be in the Shopify app store. So you can just name this whatever you want. So I'll call it WeeklyHow example app. And then for the emergency email, you can just type your email. I'll just type my own email here. And then underneath of this, we have the following admin API. This is where you can activate your the products, the access scopes basically. So you can access the analytics, customers, the discounts, the orders, the draft orders, gift cards, inventories, and so on and so forth. So if you have time, you can enable all of this, changing from no access to read access to read and write, and so on and so forth. So say for example, I want to access the orders as well as the products. So where is the products? So here, products, I'll change this to read and write. As well as for the orders, I'll change it to read and write. There you go. So after all of that, once you have set your access scopes, you can just scroll down and make sure that you are using the latest version of API for webhook. If you're going to use webhooks, obviously. But it doesn't really matter. You can use the 2021 in your API calls or I think the latest or the least version that you can use is 2020-10, I think. I'm not really sure, but yeah, as much as possible, use the latest version of API. So with that all being said, I'll just select the save button. I'll just click that. And you should have the following modal window. Just click the create app. So basically, it's just reminding you to read the terms and conditions or the terms of use. And once that's created, you will have the following API key, password, example URL, and shared secret. But the most important part here is basically it's just the API key and then the password. Just a reminder, don't share your password to anyone. This is really important. You don't want anyone to access your API, your data, basically your Shopify store. So as much as possible, don't share your password. So with that being said, let's continue and do API calls. So as an example, we have here the following example URL. We can use this in our Postman. So here I have the Postman. If you don't have Postman account, you can go to postman.com or .co, and then you can create a new account and make sure that you have created a workspace or a collection. I think that's collection. So yeah, just select your workspace and you should have the following window. And here in the request URL, you can paste the following URL that we copied from the example URL input field. So here we're using the orders API. So you can change this to products, basically products.json. And then if you send this, you should have a response right over here at the bottom. So here we have an empty product because we don't have a product yet here in our Shopify store. So if we create a new product, let me just open this in a new tab. And let me just wait for it. And I'm going to create a new product, just an example. Click add product. And here I'll just name this to example shirt. And for its description, we can just name it, or we can just give it a text of example description. And then you can just basically leave it as is. Make sure that the product status is active. And then the collection is set to homepage and so on. You can just click save. And you should create the product. There you go. And let's go back to our Postman. And then if we click the send button once again, it should update the response. And we should have here the product example product. Or I think example shirt. So click send. And there we go. As you can see now we have here the response products. And we have the ID, the title, example shirt, example description, my vendor, my Shopify store, and when it was created, and so on and so forth. So basically, from now on, you can do API calls using the following URL. So now that we have the URL or the example URL or the URL. What am I talking about? Now we have the URL, we can do our own, we can finally create our own app. So if you want to create user interface so you can easily create products or create orders and so on, you can finally create your own server. So let's open VS Code. So I'm going to create a new project. So here in the file, I'm going to create a new project. So I'll select open folder. And you know what? I'll do that in my desktop. Doesn't really matter. I'll create a new folder. And I'll just call it sheesh. Sorry. And then I'll select this folder. And we should have a new project right over here. You know, the first thing that we need to do is to apply or upload ngrok because we're going to create a terminal, or we're going to create a tunnel so we can access the local host. So open your browser once again and open a new tab and search for ngrok. And here, just select the ngrok or the official website, and you can just go here in the downloads page or download. And you can just download your download ngrok for Windows, or if you're using Mac or Linux, you can just select the more options and just select the following operating system. But since I'm using Windows, I'll just select download for Windows. And while we're waiting for that, I'll go back to VS Code, and I'm going to create a new folder, and I'll call this includes. And this is where I'm going to create the files or the functions so I can do API calls. So I didn't mention, in this video, we're going to use PHP. But if you want to use Node or React or Python or Ruby or what is the other one? JavaScript, I guess. I already mentioned Node. What you're basically going to do is just to use functions like fetch, and then you'll only need to pass the URL. And then once you do that, then you'll basically have the response from that URL, from that endpoint. So in this video, I'm going to use PHP because I'm used to PHP. If you don't know that, if you don't notice that, let's go over here in the includes folder. I'll create a new file and I'm going to call this shopify.php. And then here I'm going to create a new PHP tag. And then I'll create a class. So public, I'll just call it class, doesn't really matter. So class, and I'll call it Shopify. And I'm going to create the variables. We need 3 variables. I need the shop URL, the API key, and then the password. So I'll create the public variables. So first is the API key. And next is the shop URL or the password. Let's do the password. And then last is the supposed to be the shop underscore URL, like so. And then we're going to create 3 functions to set the values for the API key, for the password, and then the shop URL. So I'll create a new function. I'll call it set URL for the, or you know what? Let's do the API key first. So set API key. And I'm going to create a parameter here, and I'll call it key. And in here, we're going to access this variable, and I'm going to access the API key variable. And I'll pass here the value of key. Now we can just finally copy this so we don't have to manually type it again and again and again. And here, I'll change the name of the function to, instead of set API key, I'll set this to set password function. And for the parameter, I'll change this to PW. And for the this, I'll change the API key to password because we're accessing the password variable here. And then change this to PW because we're passing the value of the PW variable to the password variable of this class. And then we can just create the last function, and that is for the shop URL. So set URL. And for the parameter, let's set this to URL. And for the variable for our class, set this to shop URL. And we're passing the value of URL. There we go. So now we have the 3 functions. We can finally create the index.php here in our root folder. So I'm going to create the index.php, create the PHP tag, and I'm going to use the shopify.php using the include once function. And it's supposed to be inside the includes folder and supposed to be shopify.php. And I'm going to create a class or an object. So Shopify and then new Shopify, because we have here the Shopify class. And then we can just, we're not using constructor here. So basically what we're going to do is just to access the functions. So Shopify, and then I'm going to use the set URL function. Now I can just copy this, paste it underneath, and change the functions to set underscore API key. And last is the set password. I think that's right. Set password, URL, and then API key. There you go. And then for this, it's either we create variables for the URL, API key, or password, or we can just pass it in here. So let's open our private app, which is supposed to be in here. So let's copy the API key using the copy to clipboard button. Go back to VS Code, and what is that? The API key. Okay. So here in the set API key, I'll just pass the API key like so. And then for the password, I'll just copy the password here. I'll just paste it in here. So again, don't share your password. And then set URL, I'll just copy my domain here. So WeeklyHow example store.myshopify.com, copy that. Go back to VS Code and then paste the domain here. So we have my domain, my API key, and then the password. And there you go. Now we have set up our Shopify class. So the last thing that we're going to do is to create the API call. So I'm going to create another function. I'm going to call this REST API. Okay, so for this function, we're gonna need the endpoint, the API endpoint, and then I guess we also need the limits or the query variables, and we also need the method. So yeah, I guess that's all we need. So first is the API endpoint. So API endpoint, and then next is just an empty array for our query. So set this to an empty array. And last is the method. So method, we can just set this to get, like so. And then inside of this function, we can finally set up our URL. So let's create a new variable here and call it URL. I'm going to create the HTTPS, and then we're going to concatenate the API key, the password, and then the shop URL. So here in our browser, we have the following example. So we can honestly just copy this, go back to our VS Code and paste it. You know what? Let's just get rid of this dot symbol and that with semicolon and paste the string here. So we need the API key, the password, the domain of our Shopify store, and then the API endpoint. So, okay, so first is the API key. Let's just add in here a set of single quotes and dot symbols. And between these dot symbols, we're going to concatenate the API key. So this, and then API underscore key. And next up is the password. So highlight the password placeholder and replace that with single quotes, and then add dot symbols. And then between these dot symbols, we're going to do the same thing, this, and then we're going to access the password. There we go. And last is second to the last is the Shopify domain. So here replace that with single quotes, and then add a set of dot symbols. And then between these dot symbols, we're going to use the shop URL. So this, and then shop underscore URL. And last is the API endpoint. So we can just get rid of this and concatenate the API endpoint like so. So there you have it. Now we have the URL. We can just save this. And underneath of this variable, we can finally create the curl. So first of all, we're going to check if the method is get or delete, or I guess if it's set. So and we're going to check if in the method variable using the array function, and we're using the method variable, and we're going to check if in that variable there is get or delete. If it's get or delete. So if it's get or delete, and then so this is the closing of, let me just double check. So this is for this function, and I'm going to add here an and or ampersand. And then we're going to check if the query is not null using the isNull function. And then we're going to pass here the query variable, and make sure that you use exclamation mark to negate the value. So if it's not null, then inside of this if condition or statement, we're going to convert the query variable into a query variable, basically, for the URL. So URL, and then we're going to concatenate the URL with question mark, and then we're going to use the HTTP build query function, and we're going to pass here the query variable. There you go. So it saved that, or save the file, and then underneath of this condition, we can finally start creating the curl. So let's create a curl, and I'm going to use the curl init. So curl init, And then we're going to use the URL, which is this one. And we're going to set the options. So we need the header, the return transfer, the follow location, the redirects. What else do we need? We're going to verify the SSL, I guess, and then connect timeout, and then the custom request, because we're going to pass the method. Okay, so curl set option, and we're going to pass here first the ch variable, and then we're going to use the option curl opt underscore header, and we're going to set this to true, so we can get the headers. And then next up, let's just copy this line, honestly, paste it here. Next is the return transfer, so curl opt and then return transfer, and we can just set it to true. And next is the follow location, so curl opt follow location, and then we can also just set it to true. And then next is the maximum redirect, and we can just set it to 3. And not max redir is supposed to be curl opt underscore max redirect. There you go. Paste another set opt. And next is the curl opt underscore SSL underscore SSL underscore verify peer. We can just set it to false because we're using localhost. What else do we need? The timeout. So curl opt timeout, and then we can just set it to 30. And then next up is the connect timeout. So curl opt, and we can just use connect timeout. Make sure that you are typing double T for the connect and then timeout. Oh, there you go. And then last is the custom request. So curl opt. Before we continue, make sure that you set this to 30 as well instead of true. So last is the custom request. So custom request, and we're going to pass here the method variables. So method, there you go. So I think we're almost done. The next thing that we're going to do is to check if the get variable is set to post or put, because we're going to pass that to another set options for our curl. So underneath of the curl set of function, we're going to create a new if statement. We're going to check if the method is equal or is not equal to get. Because by default, it's set to get, right? And we're going to check if in that variable, using the inArray function, we're going to check if in the method variable, if the value of method variable is set to post or post. Did I did it correctly? No, I need to create an array. So post and then put. So let me just double check the previous one. So in array, method, and then array, get, delete, method, array, post, and put. There you go. Let me just add spaces here so I can see the beginning and then the end of the functions. So this is for the if. All right, so I think we're good now. So, and inside of this condition, we're going to check if the query variable contains, or if it's an array, or yeah, because here. All right, so inside of this condition, we're going to check if the array is an array. So if it's array, and we're going to use the query variable. If it's an array, then what I'm going to do is to convert it into a query variable. So I'm going to use the same variable. I'm going to use the HTTP build query, and then we're passing here the query variable, and that with semicolon. And then we're going to use the curl set opt function once again. Make sure that you use the ch variable, and we're going to use the curl opt underscore post fields, and then we're passing here the query. There you go, and that with semicolon. And finally, we can get the response using the execute or curl execute. So response and then we're going to use the curl execute. And we're passing here the ch variable. And then we're also gonna need the error. So error, and then we're going to use the curl error number function. Make sure that you use the ch variable. And lastly, we're getting the error message. You miss me? Sorry, my camera just stopped recording. Anyway, let's continue by creating the error message variable. So msg, and then we're going to use the curl underscore error function, and then we're passing here the ch variable, and that with semicolon. And finally, we can close the curl. So curl underscore close, and just pass here the ch variable. And there you go. We can just check if there is an error in our curl. So if error is set, then we can just console.log, not console.log, just return the message. So return and then error message, like so. Otherwise, if there are no errors, then we can just get the response, right? Okay, so in else statement, we're going to create the response variable. Supposed to be response, not respose. Response, there you go. And then we're going to use the preg filter or preg split, because this is going to be an array. So preg split, and then we're going to use the pattern. So make sure that you're using the double quotes and then forward slash, forward slash, forward slash. So between these forward slashes, we're going to create the patterns. So backward slash R, backward slash N, backward slash R, backward slash N, new lines, and then or if the pattern is next line, then we're going to split that as well. Or we're going to check if the pattern is backward slash R and backward slash R. And then for the second parameter, we're going to pass here the response 0, which is basically is an array with 0 key. So end it with semicolon, and then finally we can start creating the header and then the body for our response. So create a new variable, call it headers, and it's going to be an array. Now the great thing about this variable or this function is that you can reuse this again and again and again. I'm going to show you that later in this video. So create a new headers variable, it's going to be an array, and also create another variable and call it content. And then we're going to use the explode function. And we're going to explode that by using the next line. So next line, make sure that you're using double quotes, okay? And for the second parameter, we're going to use the response variable and make sure that you set the key to 0. And that with semicolon. And finally, we can just set the status. So we have here the status, because by default, there is no status key for our headers. So basically what it displays is HTTP 200 response. So you need that specific value to be in the status key. That's why we're creating the status key here. So for this key, we're going to use the content variable and make sure that you're using the 0, because the first key of the content variable is the HTTP 200 response. So end it with semicolon, and finally we can just use the array shift to get rid of the HTTP 200 from the content variable. So content. Okay, so after that, we're going to loop through the content using the for each function. So for each content, let's just call this C from S content. Wait a second. So for each content as C, that's what I'm trying to say. So basically, for each header from the content variable, we're passing the value to the C variable. So for each content, then we're going to create a new variable here and call it data. And then we're going to use the explode function. And we're going to use the delimiter comma or colon. And we're going to use the delimiter colon, and then supposed to be the content variable. And that with semicolon, and then we're going to use the headers variable, and then the key that we're going to pass in here is the first key of the data, because explode will basically separate the value into two subarrays. So here we're going to use the data or the data variable, and then we're going to use the 0 key. And then for its value, we're going to use the data and then the first key, or the number 1 key, the key 1. And also, there are times that the data 0 contains spaces. So make sure that you're using the trim function. So trim. So trim, like so. So there you go. We're basically done now. We can just continue by creating the response. So we're going to return that. So we're going to return an array, and then the first key, let's call it headers, and we're passing here the value of headers. And second key is for the body. We can just pass here the response and then the key 1. So there we go, end up with semicolon, and I think we're done now. We can just save this and open the index.php. And finally, we can create a new variable here and call it products. And we're going to use the Shopify and then the REST API function. And first is the endpoint, so we can use the admin API, and then supposed to be 202104, and then the API products.json, like so. And then the second parameter is just an empty array. And then the last parameter is we'll set it to get, and that with semicolon. And finally, we can just convert it into associative array. So products, and then we're going to use the JSON, the code, and then the variable products. And then make sure that you're using the body, because here in our Shopify, we're passing the body. If you want to access the headers, you can use the headers. So the second parameter for the JSON decode, set it to true to make it an associative array. And then lastly, we're going to echo out the value of product. So echo, and then print R, and then products. And end it with semicolon, hit save, and we can finally create the tunnel. So let me just go back to our browser, and I'm going to open the zip file. And I'm going to move this to our project. So open VS Code and reveal this in File Explorer. And I'll just open this folder and paste the ngrok inside. So it should be right over here now. There you go. So open the terminal and create a new tunnel by typing http ngrok and then 80. And there you go. As you can see now, we have our secured URL. We can just copy this, go back to our browser. Where's my browser? There you go. Open a new tab, and then paste the URL here. And then we're going to make sure that we're accessing the sheesh folder. So open that. And we have a problem. So I can access the SAMP, but I can't access my folder. What is the problem? Let me just... Oh, it's in the desktop, that's why. So we have to move that to a SAMP. Makes sense. So I'll just move this. So press Ctrl X, and I'm going to open my SAMP folder. And here in the htdocs, just paste the sheesh folder. And I'm going to close VS Code for now. And I'm going to paste the sheesh folder. There you go. And I'm going to reopen my VS Code. Okay, so next up, let's create a new terminal again. So ngrok http 80, this time it should work. So, okay, we got a new secured URL. Just copy this, open our browser again, and paste it here and access the sheesh folder. Open that. And we have an error. So undefined array key 1, line 63. Where is my VS Code? So include Shopify.php, the line 63. Let me just double check the response variable first. So echo print r and then the response. And with semicolon, go back to your browser, refresh the page. So we get the following response, so HTTP. So we also have in here the following response for our product. So as you can see, we have here the variants. We also have here the ID. So what is the problem? Okay, is it not converting into an array? So response, preg split. Oh, okay, I got it now. So let's just get rid of the echo statement. This is not supposed to be key 0. It's supposed to be just response, and then we're going to limit this into 2. That's why. So again, double check your preg split. That's why. Response and then limit as 2. Hit save, go back to your browser and refresh the page. All right, so I got another error. So uncut type error, explode argument to string must be typed string array given. In line 59. 59 data explode content. It's supposed to be C, not content. Hit save again. Let's open our browser. I'm getting errors now. There you go, finally. Now we get the products. So here, as you can see, an array, and we have the example t-shirt, description, and so on. So there you have it, guys. That's how you create a Shopify app on your own server, on your own website. You can basically just access your API using the following functions. So if you want to use another API endpoint, what you can do is just copy these lines or 3 lines or just 2 lines basically. And then let's just honestly comment this out. And instead of products, let's use orders. Hit save. Go back to your browser, refresh, and it should give you an empty array, which is for orders. So there you have it. You can finally just create HTML, CSS, or JavaScript codes to create a working Shopify app. So there you have it. I'm not gonna go through all of that. I'm just showing you how to create a Shopify app and use the API key, the password, the URL, the API endpoints, and so on. Now, the problem here is that you don't really access it through your Shopify app or Shopify store. So here in the apps page, you won't see your app right over here. But you can access your Shopify app using your own server. So there you have it, guys. That's how you create a Shopify private app without using or creating a developer's account. Now, like I said, the difference here is that you don't access the private app through your admin dashboard. So you can only access your Shopify app through your own server or using Postman or API testers. So yeah, if you want me to create an actual Shopify app using private apps, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit thumbs up and subscribe and hit that notification bell button so you won't miss my future upload. Did I just stutter? I think I just stuttered. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace.